Okay, students, in this video we're going to include our Java client-side libraries within our application. So all of the jQuery and Popper.js and Bootstrap libraries that we included in the last video in our project, this video we're going to go ahead and include those in our project and start working with and start building out our user interface. So this chapter covers a lot of different UI elements. So as I go through, uh, I'll end up explaining what I'm doing, and then I'll probably pause the video while I type it out because there's a lot of typing involved. And then once I'm finished typing, I'll start playing the video again and explain exactly what happened. So you'll have the book. You'll also be able to pause the video to see it, and I'll try to also explain at the same time exactly all of the stuff that I typed out while the video was paused, essentially. So if I go back to my Visual Studio Code instance where we had our libmin.js, so we installed all of our client-side libraries. We have all of our client-side libraries here in a folder within our lib and our www root folder. So now I'm going to go ahead and include those in our project. So if we remember, in our views file, we ended up having a layout that we used for all of our views to share. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start including all of those. So here's our custom CSS file already. So what I'm going to do is also include all of the other libraries that we included. So all of our JavaScript libraries and our CSS libraries. Now usually it makes the most sense to have all of your CSS libraries in one place and your JavaScript libraries in another as far as in this file. So here I'm going to put both of the style sheets together and the href. So essentially the href is where, if you remember in your HTML course, the href is where this thing exists on your machine. So let me see here. So this should exist in our lib folder / bootstrap / CSS bootstrap min CSS. So this is the minified version of our bootstrap. So if you go to the www root, here's the CSS folder, which is where our custom CSS is, but all of our stuff is in the lib bootstrap CSS bootstrap.min.css. So usually use the bootstrap min CSS because it's the minified version of the file. And what does it mean to be minified? Well, essentially it gets rid of all the white spaces and the carriage returns. So what do I mean by that? If you open up the file, you can see it's not really readable. It's all just kind of thrown in here and it's not readable whatsoever. Whereas the bootstrap CSS file is the more human readable one. So if you need to figure out what the CSS is for the bootstrap, you can come to this file. But the one we include in our project is this minified one because it takes up less space and it's less processor intensive to include this one in your project. So next I want to include the JavaScript library. So to include JavaScript libraries, we use the script tag. And the source for that, if we remember, is kind of in the same place our other one is. So I'm going to go ahead and say tilde with a /lib /jQuery. So I'm going to include my jQuery in here. Usually jQuery is always the first one you include because if it's not there first, you'll have some issues with some other libraries if it's not here. All right. So let me go ahead and pause the video and I'll include our other libraries. Okay, now that I've finished including all of the libraries, you can see this is now the finished product that you can see on page 89. Essentially, we have all of our script tags. We have Popper.js, we have Bootstrap.js. We have our jQuery validate here. And again, notice that all of them we have here are minified versions, Bootstrap min.js. So this is Bootstrap JavaScript as well as Bootstrap CSS. So the Bootstrap comes with two files that we're going to end up using. There's a jQuery validate here, again the minified version, and then we have the jQuery validation unobtrusive here. So we have all of them here. So we have them included already in our project, but we need to include them within the markup. That way we can use them on our user interface. So the only way it knows what these things are is if we include the files in our user interface. So what that does is it sends them over to the browser, so the browser can then decipher exactly what all of our tags mean and our classes mean when we end up using them on our UI. So that's how we're going to include them here. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to the next part where we talk about putting these in our user interface. So one thing I'll say before we go to that is, if we notice the first thing I included was jQuery, so that'll be the first file included in our JavaScript portion. And notice that I included that one first because then when I go to include this, it actually uses parts of jQuery to do this stuff. So if jQuery is not already there, it's going to be really confused as to what it's supposed to do. And sometimes if you don't include jQuery first, you get some errors when you go to use some of this functionality on your web browser, because it's going to say, well, you're using jQuery validate, but you don't have jQuery installed. So that's why we always put jQuery first. It's just better safe than sorry. And then including jQuery validate and jQuery unobtrusive after that. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and go to the next part here. So what exactly does it mean to be your site to be bootstrapped or your site to be responsive? So to go to the Bootstrap documentation, you can actually open up your browser here and then go to getbootstrap.com/docs. And that'll give you everything you can do in Bootstrap. And so you notice here's a link to put your Bootstrap CSS in here. If you don't have your CSS already in your project, you can get it straight from the internet, which isn't great if for whatever reason your server loses internet, but I guess if it lost internet, people can get to your website anyways. So there's a way to include Bootstrap in there. The CSS portion, here's a way to include the JavaScript portion of Bootstrap. So what does it mean exactly to have your site bootstrapped or responsive? So you notice here I have our website, the Bootstrap documentation website, and let's see what happens if I make this window smaller. So if I make this window smaller for, say, a tablet, it should still be usable. So let's go ahead and make it, it's a little too small. So there's about a tablet maybe right there. So we notice when it comes to tablet size, it's still usable. You still have this on the right-hand side. You can still see everything. Some stuff might have stacked on top of each other, but it's still readable and usable even in a tablet. So if you notice, so once we get to a tablet, this might be tablet size. This menu actually goes away in tablet size. So that menu goes away, okay. But that's about all that changes once we get to a tablet. So if we keep making it smaller, 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 and then there's about the size of a standard tablet probably, and you notice Bootstrap, what it did was it got rid of this right-hand menu. It said, okay, we're trying to save some real estate, so once it goes to around the resolution of a tablet, I want this right-hand menu to go away. And that's just one of the examples of what we can do with Bootstrap. So now let's see what happens if we go from, say, a tablet to a mobile device. So a mobile device, you have a lot less real estate and definitely not as much room here to work with the scroll bar. So let's go ahead and keep on moving it in, moving it in. And then you can see once we get to about the size of a large handheld device, and then even a smaller one, you can see that this side menu went away, this menu never came back, and now we just have something that we could possibly scroll with a finger. Now you can see the scroll bar for this came to the bottom, and then all of it is now readable from a mobile device without really needing to do any sort of mobile device programming or make a mobile application. You can see here that this became a hamburger menu now. This is called a hamburger menu. So all of this is done all with Bootstrap CSS styles that is built into the CSS framework. So if I go ahead and open this bigger again, and then you can see that there's no longer hamburger menus or anything like that. So this is all done with Bootstrap. And then another thing you can do is if you come here, you can hit the F12 button. And that brings you to this screen and you can actually emulate things such as mobile devices. So toggle the device toolbar. I'm going to make this a little bigger. So you can see that this is now responsive. So essentially what it's saying is I want this to respond to whatever I'm doing with the how big it is. So you can see this is 400 by 884. Maybe I want to instead use this as a phone. So maybe I want to say this is a iPhone X. So now it says that an iPhone X has this dimensions for the screen. Now it's emulating what this probably looks like on an iPhone X. And then it kind of gives you something that you can use that you could pretend like it's your finger. And then you could go back to say responsive, or you can just get out of this window altogether, back over here with the toggle device toolbar. It depends on what browser you're using, depends on what kind of developer tools it has. Chrome is really, really good for developer tools. This is actually, I think this is Edge, and Edge is actually pretty decent for developer tools. That might be one of the first 2 times I've actually opened that menu in Edge. So if I go ahead and open Chrome, here's our Bearcats landing, and let's see if this is bootstrapped. So we can see when it got really small that this went down to a hamburger menu, and now it's more like a phone now. So it looks like even this one is bootstrapped. So now that I'm in Chrome, let's go ahead and F12 and see what the code behind looks like. So here's all of the code, here's all the script tags that are included. If we come here to the device emulation, it's kind of the same thing. So this is back to responsive. I want this to be an iPhone X, and then we can also see how this looks on an iPhone X in Chrome as well. So the developer experience that you get is highly dependent on which browser you're using. Mozilla isn't as great, but it might have got better since I've used Mozilla. As far as the developer tools are concerned. Internet Explorer is poor to very poor, and I'm not 100% sure about Safari either. Safari might be on pace with Mozilla as far as the developer tools and how the user interface looks. Okay, so now that we talked about that, this video is getting a little long, so I'm going to go ahead and move to using some of this stuff in Bootstrap on our application in the next video. So I'll see you guys there. Thanks.